Did Disney exceed expectations with Epcot's most popular attraction? Or does it rely on a few tricks that keep us from noticing its flaws? Welcome back to Probably at Disney, where we're not just analyzing the latest news from the Disney parks, but also everybody's favorite attractions because I have some thoughts, I have some takes and opinions, and I know that you do too. So, for today, and for the first video in what I hope will become a new series, I'm putting one of Walt Disney World's newest and most popular attractions, Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, through the Attraction Audit. Here is how this is going to work. I'm going to walk you through 4 categories, from story to queue to ride experience and then overall value. And we're going to ask the questions of whether it lives up to the hype. Is it an attraction for everyone? Will you regret splurging for that lightning lane? You get it. It will be honest, balanced analysis the Probably at Disney way. And as we go, we're going to talk about some details that you may not know. And in the end, we'll give the ride its final score and see if you think that I'm being fair. So keep those hands and arms inside the ride vehicle and pull up on the yellow tab because this is Probably at Disney's Attraction Audit. And today we're putting Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind through its paces. But first, a few Cosmic Rewind facts for you. Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind officially opened on May 27th, 2022 at Epcot, replacing Ellen's Energy Adventure, which closed in 2017. It is a first in more ways than one, as it's Disney's first backward launch coaster and the first Walt Disney World attraction to feature characters from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is because the Guardians were not used at Universal Orlando, allowing Disney to sidestep that pesky contract. However, you still will not find the name Marvel anywhere in this ride, as that would be a violation of that said contract. Cosmic Rewind is also a described story coaster due to the coaster's vehicle's unique ability to rotate to focus on certain set pieces, kind of Omnimover style. Finally, Imagineering went to the set of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 to film the ride's live-action footage and worked with director and writer James Gunn, leading to 75 minutes of original Guardians of the Galaxy content. The last thing I'll mention, and one of the reasons I'm auditing this ride first, is that I was fortunate enough to be among the first to experience this ride before it opened in 2022 due to my real-world job, and I was able to talk directly to the Imagineers. So I'm going to pepper in some information and insight from that experience as we go. But let's not waste any more time. We have an audit to do, and we're going to do this in the order that you experience the ride. We're going to talk about what the ride is about, what is its story, its plot, its theme. Then we're going to go through the queue, and then on to the ride, and then discuss its overall value. And we're going to grade each of these categories on a scale of 1 through 5, with 5 being the best and 1 being the worst. At the end, we'll do the math and see just what Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind's overall score will be. So let's get to it, Epcotians, beginning with the storyline of Cosmic Rewind. The plot, the narrative of Cosmic Rewind is that Xandar, which is a planet from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which has played a role, albeit a small one, in the Guardians of the Galaxy films, has, in the style of Epcot's World Showcase, established a pavilion to educate us Earthlings, or as they call us Terrans, about their planet. And as part of that intergalactic educational experience, we get beamed up to their ship to see how they got here in the first place. And that is where we're introduced to this ride's MacGuffin, its catalyst, and that is the cosmic generator. But in true Disney fashion, tech demonstrations never go according to plan, and we, vacationing tourists, are drafted with the Guardians of the Galaxy to prevent our entire timeline from being erased courtesy of a Celestial. That is that giant man outside the window in the pre-show. His name is Isan. And from there, we are rushed to evacuation shuttles that Rocket Raccoon programmed to follow that celestial and to stop all of this from happening. So let's talk here because I have a lot to say about what I just said. I like the idea of Xandar having a World Showcase like pavilion since this is Epcot after all. But the problem is, even if you're familiar with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Xandar is far from the first thing that I think of when I think of Guardians of the Galaxy. So its inclusion, its focus is a little weird. And the fact that we have to leave Earth to see their tech, even though they came to Earth to build this pavilion, it's a little odd, and I think it's a little confusing for some guests. I alluded to the fact as well that Disney has used the storyline of a tech demonstration gone wrong many times before, one of the most famous being Magic Kingdom's infamous alien encounter. They even used the storyline on Disney Cruise Line at the Worlds of Marvel restaurants. So a tech demo storyline is one that Disney continues to use and reuse. So is that a little overdone? Maybe. And then having us Terrans, who are essentially guests here in space, now being sent to follow a celestial to save time itself, it's a bit of a stretch, and that is evident by just how fast that Rocket Raccoon explains all of this to us during the pre-show. Finally, there's the whole concept of jumping back in time while aboard the ride. The Guardians characters, via onboard narration, are the ones who really fill us in that this is happening. But I guarantee you, few guests actually get that's the plot, because the moon and the visuals of the galaxies you see on the ride, coupled with the big screen visuals of the Nova Corps ships attempting to take the Celestial down, they don't really communicate that. So overall, Cosmic Rewind's storyline is a little strange for the Guardians franchise, as well as difficult to follow, and one that's just hard to invest in. So for that, on a 1 to 5 scale, I gotta give this ride storyline a 2.5 out of 5. Is that harsh? Maybe, but hear me out. If Xandar was supposed to be a World Showcase pavilion at Epcot, I think Disney should have gone all in on that concept. It should have been treated like a World Showcase pavilion. But since it's not, the Xandar focus just seems like a weird choice and one they likely made to try and shoehorn this IP into Epcot. The problem is that the Xandar focus and the lack of commitment to the pavilion concept really shows, and in the end, it just doesn't serve either the Guardians IP or Epcot itself. Also, again, this is a partially recycled storyline and one that unfortunately gets weaker as it goes. So that is why in this category alone, I have to give it a 2.5. But the next category is Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind's queue. I remember the very first time I stepped inside the doors of this attraction, and my immediate thoughts were, wow, a trash can and a blank wall. Trust me, I will have plenty of great things to say about this attraction. It is one of my all-time favorites, even if I don't sound like it is so far. But just because it's one of my favorites doesn't mean I think it's the best. There is some shortchanging in this ride, and this is an audit. And while I'm going to be honest and spotlight its flaws or shortcomings, don't think I won't be acknowledging the good. It is coming. But back to the queue and those blank walls and that trash can. My take is that Cosmic Rewind's line is a tale of two queues. The first half of the line experience is a lot of blank walls and a screen in the ceiling, courtesy of a planet that's relatively minor in the Guardians franchise. So that's why I'm not a fan. I do give props, however, to the model of Xandar and the Walt Disney references in the video screens, but the scale of the queue in the front half of the attraction experience that's just dotted with a few things here and there, and given how much time you will likely spend in this queue if you're waiting in standby, it's just not as enjoyable as other ride queues Disney has done in the past. As for the first pre-show, It is awesome that Imagineering got Glenn Close, who is in the Guardians films, for this role. She is a huge get, plus it provides some continuity between the films and the ride. Also, Terry Crews is a real highlight and where we start to get some humor and some plot. But is it a little long? I think it is, and I'll have more to say on that as we go. The second pre-show, though, is where I think Cosmic Rewind's queue takes a turn for the better. This is where things start to get good. That awesome room transformation effect always wows first-timers. I know it wowed me the first, second, and even third time I experienced this attraction, and it almost makes me forget that we could have had animatronics in here. But I give the budget cuts a pass because I personally love the dialogue that we get from the Guardians and even Terry Crews in the second pre-show. This is when I finally begin to feel like I'm in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. In fact, back when the ride first opened, Imagineer Wyatt Winter, who is now overseeing Magic Kingdom's Villains Land, by the way, shared with me that they wanted to infuse James Gunn, who is the director and writer of the franchise. They wanted to infuse his swagger into the ride script, and I definitely think they succeeded. And I think the reveal of the Celestial Eson and the image quality is really good as well. You get an idea of his massive scale, and the detail just really pops from the screen. And for reference, Celestials were briefly in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but their design changed between then and 2021's Eternals from Marvel Studios. And that latter design is what you're seeing here. I know I'm getting in the Marvel weeds here, but Imagineering admitted they went with the new design of Celestials from Eternals for this ride in order to create some cohesiveness. So you're actually seeing influences and characters from not one, but two Marvel movies in Cosmic Rewind at Epcot. But like I've been saying, it is here and throughout the remainder of the queue that we have a very different experience from the first half of the queue. There is now a sense of urgency and danger. The architecture and the color palette has changed, and it looks and feels more Marvel and more Guardians with that bright, warm, oversaturated colors and kind of the grittiness of space. I also love the Toy Story Mania-esque two-story queue with windows looking down on the ride vehicles and the boarding area. It really works with the space station aesthetic, and it just adds to the energy and the anticipation you feel as you get closer to your time to ride. It is also intended to be inspired by the kiln in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Now let's talk logistics in terms of the queue for a second. Due to the ride's enduring popularity, Cosmic Rewind pretty much always has a long standby line, and it's only available as a Lightning Lane single pass or Lightning Lane a la carte. And adding to those issues is the two rather lengthy pre-shows. Disney has been testing letting guests, and especially Lightning Lane guests, skip the pre-shows to kind of move things along. But typically that's not the case, and both pre-shows, again, take a significant chunk of time. So even if Cosmic Rewind is a walk-on to the pre-shows, it is unlikely that either standby or Lightning Lane guests will be able to get to this ride in less than 20 minutes, and that is the best case scenario. So considering the queue's two styles, its shortcomings and highlights, and its length, I gotta give Cosmic Rewind's queue a score of 3 out of 5. That is a little better than the score I gave it Storyline, but there is still definitely some issues here for sure. I almost went for a 3.5, but something I wanted to mention, especially for families or those with mobility issues, is that guest intensity to get through the pre-shows and to the boarding area as quickly as possible can be really intense and even dangerous at certain times of day. Later in the day and towards closing, I have seen some guests even get physical and push on people who aren't in their party in an effort to get to the next portion of the queue. And the rush out of those doorways and around corners would really make me nervous if I had kids with me. And given how those spaces are designed, I'm just not sure how much good a cast member could even do in those situations. So, because of that, I feel like a 3 is fair, considering the other weak points I mentioned, such as how long the queue is and how the front half is kind of boring and budget cut. Now, let's get to the whole point of the attraction, which is the ride experience. And we're going to start with the ride vehicle. In addition to being a first of their kind in that they can rotate like an omnimover, these Xandarian escape shuttles or star jumpers are one of the more comfortable coaster vehicles I've ever been in my opinion. Each vehicle seats 4, 2 in the front and 2 in the back, and both the seats and the lap bar are molded or kind of contour to your body, which makes you feel secure and like your seat is truly your own. Like most coasters, the ride begins with the climb to the jump point, but this one is to the hilarious and in-character commentary from the Guardians cast. And then the music you hear when you pass the jump point and for a second feel like you're suspended in space, it is peak. It is so well done. But then we get to the attraction's biggest sin, the seams. The screens and projections do not extend the full length of the wall, and it shows. In some places more than others. And after that brief and glorious moment of feeling like you're in space, seeing those seams just shatters the illusion. It really takes you out of it. But fortunately, another highlight is quickly approaching. The coaster is rotating into position for that backwards launch. And when it happens, that is when the fun begins. One of the ride's 6 songs begins at random as the coaster launches backwards through the jump point and your ride vehicle begins to slide and rotate through the building with surprising fluidity. Seriously, it is shockingly smooth, and there's that bit of a thrill from not always being able to see the track in front of you. Meanwhile, projections of the Celestial and the Guardians can be seen on the walls, still with those seams unfortunately at times, and all the while you're being rotated around galaxies and even around the moon, all while hearing the Guardians through your ride vehicle's speakers, giving a play-by-play and delivering some awesome one-liners. So between the humor, the smooth thrill of the coaster, and the Guardians' random soundtracks, it is tough not to be enjoying yourself. And this is what makes Cosmic Rewind truly unique. Yes, it's a coaster, and you're moving fast, but the dialogue, coupled with the music, makes it more fun and joyful than just adrenaline-filled thrills. It's an action comedy version of Space Mountain meets Rock and Roller Coaster, just minus the inversions in the rickety track. I'll also note that the ride length is just about perfect. It does not feel too long, nor does it feel too short. And we have the added benefit of rewritability thanks to Guardians' 6 songs, which consist of September by Earth, Wind and Fire, Disco Inferno by the Tramps, Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Blondie's One Way or Another, I Ran So Far Away from A Flock of Seagulls, and Conga from Gloria Estefan. Imagineering shared that their song choices were not based on their own preferences. They actually rode the attraction while listening to a whole range of songs from the 70s and 80s, looking for tunes that complemented the ride experience. They had to be right for the ride itself and not be like you're listening to a song on the radio while you're riding. And these are the songs that made the cut. These are the ones that work with the coaster. Now, before we get to our final analysis of the ride experience and give this category a score, we need to talk about motion sickness, as that was a huge issue when this ride first opened. Guests should know that even though the ride vehicles rotate and turn, you're never fully spinning or rotating. You're just turning to face certain directions. However, this will take place while going around tight curves and over bunny hills, and often in the dark, lending itself to motion sickness, which can really be a problem for guests who struggle with that. I have heard, though, that certain rows and seats are less prone to motion sickness than others, but as someone who doesn't get motion sick, I cannot personally attest to that, so I would recommend asking a cast member if that is a concern of yours. So with that being said, what is the verdict of Cosmic Rewind's ride experience? I gotta give it a 4.5 out of 5. It is thrilling, it is fun and joyful, it's smooth, and it has rewritability. Therefore, I have no choice but to give it a high score. It only falls short, in my opinion, due to the limited scope of the screens. But even though I'm giving it its flowers, I do want to point out to you 2 tricks that Disney relies on to cover some of those ride sins and to make this attraction as fun and enjoyable as it is. And that is James Gunn and Imagineering script and the music. Disney and theme parks in general have learned through recent years how music not only enhances a show or dark ride, but a thrill ride. Music comes with emotion already built in addition to being able to amplify emotions that you're already feeling. So that can take a coaster to the next level. Coupled with the fact that the Guardian soundtrack consists of 70s and 80s tunes, and now you've got some attitude with some nostalgia as a bonus. This coaster, without its music, would be a very different ride experience. So to my thinking, music can cover a multitude of sins, so to speak, and do the work in elevating an attraction emotionally and psychologically. As for the script from James Gunn and Imagineering, it does a lot of the heavy lifting as well. The commentary from the Guardians while you ride really elevates the overall experience. It keeps that Guardians flavor, it keeps the mood light, and it keeps you keyed into the plot without your visual surroundings having to do that for you. So I think just those 2 components, coupled with the ride system, is what makes this attraction such a hit. It is the jet fuel behind its popularity. It's what makes you overlook or at least willingly swallow some of its issues, some cut corners, and its long wait. And while the ride system itself is complicated and an engineering marvel, the music and dialogue is a very simple thing. Moving on to our final category, which is overall value. How much value are you getting for your time spent in line, for all of your effort in getting to the attraction, for all of your planning, and maybe even for the cost of your lightning lane? And in this category, once again, I'm giving Cosmic Rewind a 4.5. The only reason I'm slightly docking it is due to the motion sickness factor. Due to how much time and effort you have to invest in even getting on this ride, it would be a huge letdown if you end up sick or queasy afterwards. But apart from that, and even though this ride is a time commitment, even when the queue is at its shortest, guests overwhelmingly come away from this attraction having been thrilled and entertained. They don't feel that they were shortchanged from the length, and it has multi-generational appeal due to the Marvel brand and the oldies music in addition to its rewritability. Also, I want to mention that while not everyone in the family can ride this attraction due to the height requirement, that requirement itself is only 42 inches, while other truly thrilling coasters on property like Tron and Rock and Roller Coaster are typically 48 inches, and it's even shorter than the height requirement for Animal Kingdom's Expedition Everest, which is 44 inches. So when it comes to a roller coaster at Disney World, this one really cast a wider net, allowing more members of the family to ride than others. But there you have it. That is my audit of Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. And in adding up how I scored the categories we covered, this Epcot attraction earned a 14.5 out of 20. Is that too low? Or do you agree when considering the different categories or components we discussed? I am very curious to hear your thoughts and your scores as well, and whether you think any attraction at Walt Disney World is worthy of a perfect score, a perfect 20 out of 20. Please do share your thoughts, your comments, and your scores down below. And if you enjoyed this video, if you like this concept as a series, and if you enjoy Disney Park news and analysis, please do hit that like button and subscribe. But regardless, and as always, thank you for taking the time to watch today, and I hope that you have a magical day.
Come on, it's me! We got this!
We're all toast! First it was cake, now there is toast. This plan is making me so hungry.